Hey guys, All in Crypto here, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another YouTube video. This is going to be our daily cryptocurrency market update, and it's going to be a jam-packed one. We've got lots to discuss. Today is a significant day, by all accounts, for the stock market, certainly the S&P, as we see company earnings, some real significant company earnings coming out today, tomorrow, and on Thursday. Some real big ones, the likes of Amazon, Apple, Meta, Microsoft, Google, the CME Group, General Motors, Coca-Cola, Boeing, so on and so forth. So I think it's something like over 60% of the S&P, which is an index's value, in terms of the stocks that it holds. Their earnings are coming out this week. So you are going to see some movements in the stock market. Could the fact that hedge funds recently upped their bearish positions on the S&P 500 futures, remaining net short, be a precursor to how these earnings are going to come out? I covered with my Patreon members yesterday the fact that GDP may be a good metric to look at to kind of paint companies with a wide brush, together to kind of see, okay, well, if GDP is down, you're likely going to see earnings come down and potentially lower than expected in some areas. So we'll be talking about that. We're going to be talking about the fact that we still have, I don't think the market bottoms in. From a day trading point of view right now, I'm kind of throwing my hands in the air and saying I'll sit this one out until we break. This market has essentially just been going sideways. I keep having this nightmare that Bitcoin is still at 19,200. And then I wake up to find that it's a reality. For me, I'm far more of a trend-based trader, or a breakout trader, than I am somebody that likes to trade sideways markets. I know what markets are for me and what aren't. Trades here, or to trade here, is kind of forced. Let me know in the comment section what your thoughts are, whether you think to go long or short here. On a day trading perspective, on a sort of broader time horizon, daily, weekly time horizon, we do expect that further downside. And to me, Bitcoin looks like it's very much on a sort of cliff's edge right now. You're just waiting to invalidate. You're kind of squeezing here, waiting for that break. And I think once you get the break, you're going to get momentum behind it. I think right now, even though it seems like everybody's bearish, everybody isn't. There's a lot of bulls still out there that if, this did break to the upside and sort of popped its head above 20K, they'd probably try and chase that and look for that momentum, which still ties in with our thesis of what you kind of do. Typically before you actually break down, is you get one kind of exit pump, if you will, just clearing out the shorts and getting the longs too aggressive, using that liquidity to actually cause that further downside before you actually get that first kind of roll that then sets the pace of momentum. I don't think we're doing anything different to what we've done the whole way down, guys, and it really does look like 2018's price action here that's probably going to lead to a similar sort of event. Doesn't have to happen right now. I think just given the sort of macroeconomic context, things look like they're set to go lower. High inflation. We got German PMI yesterday, and I actually was looking at the German PPI. So the German Producer Price Index measures the change in price in goods sold by manufacturers. As of October, so this would have been for September, we had a 45.8% actual, which is insane, guys. And this is why we see such dollar strength. I've repeatedly said that for me, the chart that I'm more interested in than anything right now is the Dixie. Because if the Dixie continues to go higher, that means really assets are going to continue to go lower. Generally, as a rule of thumb, certainly Bitcoin with its correlation. But if it has a rest period, maybe you do get that rally, and maybe, Bitcoin can push it back above 20K, and we can kind of see that upside. I'm not fussed whether this breaks to the up or the downside. We've also said we're not, even though we don't think it is the bottom, we're actually not fussed if it is. We've already, in many cases, quadrupled plus crypto holdings from when we got out. But I just don't think it is. And I think, you could see one final rally and hoorah to the upside before you get that slam down, but I think that slam down is ultimately on the cards, and that's just taking into account the fact that inflation is just killer right now, and is causing huge wealth destruction to the masses, less money flowing into markets. You also have interest rates that not only are high where they are and at unsustainable levels, in my opinion, to such a levied up debt system, but they're actually set to get worse, which is going to continue to drain liquidity. We've done lots of analysis about liquidity on this channel. I don't see other channels really talking about liquidity. even though it is the very driver of markets. So what today potentially is going to bring, I think, has a lot to do with these earnings. You know, what are we going to see the stock market do? Well, the futures as of right now is slightly down. It's kind of not really doing a lot. The UK markets are down, gold's down. Again, the dollar's taking a bit of a rest. Always worries me. I'd be quite happy to see a dollar rest period, which means I could maybe get some longs in on the short term. But the problem is this has just been relentless the whole way down. So how many people have been calling bottoms, or tops, I should say, on this the whole way up? All your big YouTube channels. We've been persistently saying, and we had targets at 108 well before we even broke 100. And we were actually expecting a bit more of a rest at 108, but we did get a bit of a pullback into it. But how many people have been wrong on this time and time again? And this is the thing with rallies like the one you're seeing for the dollar. They often surprise people and far extend what their think is capable. And I also want to talk very quickly about the Chinese markets, because Chinese stocks absolutely tanked. Now this worries me, because why is that happening? Is there about to be some sort of event? We saw Russian stocks tank prior to obviously what's unfolded. And when I say I think there's more downside, I think that's very probable based on the economic situation. I also think that what people aren't really pricing in right now is serious risk elements. There's wars going on in certain parts of the world. We also have lots of other things taking place, and people have put the yield curve to the back of their mind. I think the yield curve is going to predict something that's on our doorstep and going to be very soon, certainly early next year. I don't think it's going to take 2 years to play out, and I think that has a lot to do with debt failure, which, if they continue to up interest rates, certainly the US, and put all this pressure on everything, you are going to have defaults, and that is going to have huge contagion. And potentially it has the capability of having more contagion than 2008, because it's going to be more global. We're talking potentially about a global recession if the course isn't averted that they're on right now rapidly. And if it is averted and they pivot and they start to go back to stimulating markets and lowering interest rates, and we have to continue on in this zero interest rate environment, we'd be bullish on markets again, because it has, liquidity tap is now turned back on. Issue is that's not the environment we're in, and the people calling for that, and I understand that people are trying to predict the future because markets are forward looking and they'll adjust based on what's coming down the road, not what's here today. You need that kind of confirmation to say that the Fed is thinking about pivoting. First of all, you've not defined what you mean by pivot. Are you just talking about they're going to stop up in interest rates and leave them where they are, which isn't really a pivot? Or are you talking about they're going to undo them? And so far, they've not given any signals or telegraphs to say they're going to undo them. They've said they may take some breaks here and there, and they may start to slow down on them. But that's not a pivot. And we've gone from 25 basis point rate hike being very bearish to 75 basis point rate hike being bullish. Like, it's just, markets don't make a lot of sense right now, which is why as an investor I'm happy to be in US dollar stable coins, and so is my community, and it's paid us so far, and really waiting for potentially that capitulation. If it doesn't happen and this is the bottom, which we can't say with how can we say that with 100% certainty? We'd be a damn liar. We just don't think it's probable. But if this is the bottom, then we've got plenty of time to get back in and really capitalize off this amazing technological revolution. In the next couple of weeks, guys, you guys are going to get so much crypto content from me, talking about my favorite projects, talking about my favorite altcoins, and really diving into many different cryptocurrency ecosystems, certainly layer 1 and layer 0 ecosystems. So we, of course, have got all these earnings. What this is going to do is going to be interesting. Again, it's going to really affect the S&P. Futures for the S&P is down. What is this draw that we had here? So we were wrong on this falling. But you are now running into this resistance. So the real test is, do you put in a double top here and reject off it, which I think is more probable, or do you come back, hold it, and then start to make your way there? We've spoken and we've done this a million times, looking at 2008 and how you're just very much following it. It really is a big week for the stock market, and we'll see what comes of it. We don't really know until we get the earnings. If GDP is anything to go by, they're going to be slightly down, in my opinion. And the fact that we see hedge funds recently up their bearish positions on S&P futures, remaining net short, and this came out yesterday, so this is ahead of these earnings coming out. So maybe there's something quite telling there. You've got to look at everything. We've talked about the fact that German PMI and PPI is extremely bad. This is killing off the German citizens. in terms of their wealth. It's wealth destructive. And in actual fact, you know, it's bad for the Eurozone as a whole, which I think is in some serious trouble. And I think the dollar is going to be the last currency standing, if you will. There are lots of talks actually about countries, even Egypt recently came out, so we're going to move away from and discourage people from using the dollar. I think you're really going to see this push. You know, it's an economic warfare that we're potentially going through. US listed Chinese stocks drop 15% after Beijing's power reshuffle makes the market uninvestable. So this worries me. And I'm going to tell you why. You know, this is, let's take a look since you know, it's been horrific for Chinese stocks that saw some appreciation from March 2020 and have been on a downward trajectory. More so than the whole March 20. Chinese stocks don't really resemble the UK or US stock market, which is a lot more in sync, and European stock market. This worries me when I see these horrific moves within the Chinese stock market, because, and certainly the Chinese stocks, because it kind of is an indication that, you know, tensions aren't great, and that, you know, people are expecting some sort of catalyst for these stocks to go down, and certainly for US interests to not be a partaker in them. So this is going to be extremely interesting. Could this be a Taiwan situation or something like that? Total speculation, but all things you've got to pay attention to. I always ask myself, because of how we're, you know, lots of what we're saying right now, it's not negative, it's more real, but I guess has negative connotations. I always have to ask myself, okay, are they going to pivot? Is this going to come to some sort of a soft landing? Because they are real scenarios. Is what I'm saying here, none of it's happened until it's happened. So you need to bear that in mind, right? So everything that I'm saying, a lot of it is largely speculation, but me forward looking and going, okay, well, if this situation arises, this may happen. And if this situation doesn't arise, well, this may not happen. So just because we're saying that, you know, Chinese stock selling off is bad and it could be a sort of forewarning for something coming on later down the line, doesn't mean it has to happen. But what we are saying is there's resemblances with nations having this kind of a sell-off and then entering, you know, a sort of Ukraine, Russia situation or so on and so forth. But total speculation on my behalf. Just sort of linking up the comparables. Again, Jim Cramer talking about a peak on the dollar. Makes me want a long dollar and short the risk on asset classes. You are going to get a peak on the dollar at some point. The real question for me is, you know, now that we've run into March, and we did say you'd have a rest here, being the fact that it was 2001's was the prior price action you had, which should serve as some sort of resistance, even though it's been a very long time. And you tend to find that more recent price action acts as better resistance than, you know, historical price action, you know, 10 years plus. But the dollar will have a peak. I just don't think that it's day as yet. And people keep calling peak on the dollar. And the issue is they're not looking at the countries that the Dixie is paired against, and the dollar versus the euro, or the dollar versus the AUD, or the CAD, or whatever it may be. And I think ECB has interest rate hikes this week, and so does the Bank of Canada. So it's going to be a very, very interesting and volatile week. And on this channel, we will try and keep you informed with it, try and keep you on the right side of these markets. For us, that right side is being strategically stablecoin positioned, ready to capitalize on further downside, if that further downside comes. There's no guarantee with that. But if it does come, we'll be ready. And we've been right really since 44K, and I think we're going to continue to be. So if you've enjoyed this content, guys, a like is always appreciated. So is a comment. And I look forward to seeing each and every one of you in the next YouTube video. Have a wonderful Tuesday, guys.